Hi everyone, this is Erica Wood from the Hopkins County Extension Office, and I'm back with another video. And today I'm going to be talking about these lovely plants here, and these are known as Hoyas. And Hoyas also go by the common names wax plant or porcelain flower, and they are pretty well-known houseplants and really have increased in popularity over the past few years. So just to start out with a little bit of information on Hoyas. So these are members of the Apocynaceae family. This is also known as the milkweed or dogbane family. And so as with many members of this family, if you were to cut off a piece of stem, you may notice that it secretes this kind of white sap. And you do have to watch with that sap because if you get it on your fingers, just avoid getting it in your eyes. It can be a little bit of an irritant on your skin. So just kind of watch that. That's very common for members of this family. So a lot of our Hoyas are native to parts of Asia, Japan, Taiwan, and they have a very epiphytic nature where it's very common for these plants to be vining plants. And so they'll go up trees or rock surfaces, things like that. And so a lot of times these make great hanging baskets, or they're going to perform better and grow better if you can trellis them or give them some kind of support for their vines to kind of go up too. Now, there are more upright varieties as well that in some areas of the world kind of become these almost like sub-shrubs. And so there are certain species that do have that kind of growth habit. But primarily, many of the ones that you're going to be getting in the greenhouse and nursery industry are going to be a lot of our trailing type Hoyas. So some other characteristics of Hoyas, a lot of times they often have very thick, waxy, glossy leaves. And so they almost have like a succulent nature to them. And so a lot of times people will often kind of treat them like succulents, which is a little bit misleading. And we'll kind of get to that in a little bit. But yes, a lot of times they typically have kind of these thicker leaves. But you can kind of see from the ones that I have here, their leaf shape can be very diverse. Here we've got these very thin leaves on the Hoya retusa to things such as our Hoya carnosa cultivars here. So very, very diverse group. Now, when it comes to other things, so these plants can bloom, and so oftentimes they produce clusters of these star-shaped flowers. Now, sometimes those flowers can be solitary, such as on the Hoya retusa, they are solitary, and I will actually kind of insert some pictures because this does have a couple blooms on it. But otherwise, Hoyas do produce these clusters of these star-like flowers. Oftentimes they are fragrant or have a nice, light smell. Things like the retusa have like this kind of lemony, light lemony scent, and others might have a little bit of a sweeter note to them. So a lot of people really like Hoyas because of the flowers that they produce. Now, what's interesting with the flowers is they are born on these stalks that are known as peduncles. And so you want to be careful with your peduncles. A lot of times people are very tempted to go ahead and cut it off once the flowers are done blooming, almost like deadheading the plant. But with Hoyas, you want to leave those peduncles on because actually they will continually bloom. So those peduncles will continue to produce blooms over and over again over time. So make sure you're leaving those on there. So a couple other things, let's kind of talk about care for your Hoyas. So even though Hoyas have this kind of succulent nature to them, oftentimes they don't do well in too harsh of a light. So I would not put these with your cacti and succulents. So you may want to avoid places like a south-facing window that really gets that harsh, direct, warm light. You may want to consider putting these in an east-facing window that gets that nice morning sun and then afternoon shade. They're going to do pretty well in that type setting. They could also do okay in a west-facing window as long as that afternoon sun is not too harsh on them. Maybe you can kind of use blinds or curtains to obstruct that a little bit. But preferably a bright and direct light location is going to be best for Hoyas. Now, when it comes to watering, you're going to want to let these dry out between waterings. So I always use the method where you want to kind of stick your pinky down into the first 1 to 2 inches of soil and then just kind of feel that soil. If it feels dry to the touch, you're going to want to water it. If it still feels moist, then you're going to leave it alone. Certainly you don't want to overwater these and have these prone to different root rot diseases. That would not be good. So let them dry out pretty well between waterings. Now, sometimes when people let Hoyas dry out for long amounts of time, that can stress them out to the point where they may produce flowers. Not that I'm telling you to stress your Hoya out because you want yours to remain healthy and happy, but sometimes those are ways that people have kind of helped to promote flowering, is for these dry periods, these extended dry periods of time. These do like humidity. If you can put them in a more humid setting, that is ideal. However, they can tolerate lower humidity settings, such as in our houses. When it comes to fertilizing, these are pretty easy going. You can just fertilize during the growing season, like spring into the summer months, just with a standard houseplant fertilizer. If you have just kind of a standard garden fertilizer, you just may want to dilute that a little bit because they just don't need exceptional amounts of fertilizer. Some other things. So when it comes to just general care tips such as pruning, you really want to, you don't want to have to prune these unless you see kind of dead or diseased branches. And so if the stems are still pretty bendy and green, depending on their coloration, some might have kind of more of these red colorations. If they're still pretty flexible and bendy and colorful, then you're just going to leave them alone. If they start to brown up and then they just kind of break really easily, then you can go ahead and trim off that stem. Now, what's tempting to do with Hoyas is oftentimes people who may not be familiar with Hoyas just want to go ahead and cut these long pieces of stem off. But that's actually doing more harm than good. So it's very common for Hoyas to extend out their long stems first before they start to produce leaves. Okay, so the stems are going to look a little barren for a little while before the leaves start to sprout and come out at the nodes. Okay, so if you look at this little guy, and I'll kind of do a close-up here, you can see the leaves that are starting to form off of this stem. So you just have to make sure you give your Hoya time for those leaves to mature. So don't cut this off, especially if it's still alive. Only cut off any dead or diseased branches off of your Hoya. Probably some other things I would say This plant usually doesn't have a lot of pest or disease issues. Primarily mealybugs are what we worry about with that. Mealybugs are kind of the white, fluffy, cottony bugs. And especially when you have Hoyas like this little guy, this is a Hoya compacta, where it's very easy for insects to kind of hide in between the leaves. It can be a little bit difficult to remove those insects. So you just have to stay vigilant. Make sure you're monitoring your plants, weekly, and make sure you don't see any signs of pests. And if you do have mealybugs, try to wipe off the ones that you see with a wet paper towel, and then you can go into using certain things like maybe an insecticidal soap to remove them, to try to kill them off. But it is hard because Hoyas, again, there's a lot of easy hiding spaces for bugs, so you have to watch that. Sometimes these can get some leaf spot diseases. Usually it's nothing major. What I would recommend is you just watch, splashing too much water on the leaves. Just make sure you're watering the soil and not the actual plant itself. So water the soil good and avoid that water splashing on the leaves. And then finally, something else I'll mention too is just be careful if you are going to take these outside during the summer months. We live in Kentucky, so of course I either keep these as houseplants all year long, or I bring them out in the summer and then keep them indoors during the winter. If you take them outside during the summer months, you just want to again be monitoring them for pests, because what I have found is aphids are attracted to Hoyas, very similar to how aphids are attracted to other members of the milkweed family. So again, kind of be watching for those insects, because you don't want to then bring it in during the winter and you're bringing those bugs in as well, and then you risk them infecting other plants. So just kind of watch that and be careful. But other than that, Hoyas are a really great houseplant to keep in your homes, and there's just so many different species and varieties that are out on the market right now. So you can get true species, you can get different cultivars that have these really pretty variegations on them, others that have small clusters of flowers, others that have large clusters of flowers that are in different colors of whites and yellows and reds and pinks and purples. So really the possibilities are endless with Hoyas. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye-bye.